Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
Hello to anyone who's listening to this in the Temple Beth Am podcast series. It's Wednesday morning and we're here to study Torah. We're going to study some Torah. Just some kind of full disclosures. I, like many of you, am feeling a little distracted. We really are watching a cataclysm unfold that seems to be getting closer and closer, not just geographically, but also relationally. Literally minutes before a class began, I heard about the first one of our members whose house is completely destroyed, and they weren't even in town, so they didn't get a chance to even go in and take out keepsakes. So they're going to be coming home to literally nothing, and that's just one pixel in a terrible, terrible, horrifying picture. It's also the case that just my day has gotten busier than it was going to be. So I'm not going to teach as long as I normally would, but we haven't taught for a few weeks. I want to make sure that we dedicate some time to study Torah today. But if I seem distracted, it's because I am. And as I said in Daily Minyan this morning, obviously the most important thing is that so far, at least within our community, and for what I can tell within Los Angeles, there has not been catastrophic loss of life, although I don't know what they're going to find when they go in. But it's almost as catastrophic to lose everything that you have. And it's apocalyptic. 2 synagogues that we know of are completely destroyed. Pali High School, I think, is gone. This is so Pasadena Jewish Center and Temple is destroyed, and we believe that KI on the Palisades is gone.
That's the reconstruction.
That's the biggest reconstruction of synagogue in Los Angeles, maybe the West Coast, and in a beautiful, beautiful building on Sunset. So it's going to be the next few hours, days, weeks are going to draw upon a lot of our resources of time and potentially finances and emotions. And we also take care of ourselves. And one of the ways we should take care of ourselves is by doing things that delight us, and that is stimulating our minds and our spirits with the study of Torah. So I just wanted to put that out there so it was clear. It's a weirdly abrupt transition, but that's where we are. We're on chapter 12 of the book of Shemot, having done verse 2, including the Rashis. I'm going to go back and read the verse to you again, which is the end of a 2-verse mini story in the Torah that then quickly changes gears at verse 3. Right, verse 2 of chapter 12 was Hachodesh Hazel Lachem. This month will be to you Rosh Chodeshim, the beginning of the months. Rishon Hu Lachem, it's the first for you. Good morning, Sandy. Lechodshei Hashana, of all the months of the year. And we talked about what that meant, and is this mostly the idea of the beginning of the Jewish calendar, or is this, as Rashi fantasized, God showing Moses how to identify when there's a new month, like a halachic concept of this is what it's going to look like when you're going to announce a new month? But that's it, because by the time we get to verse 3, which we're about to read, which I think we anticipated a little bit last time we didn't read, we're in something very different. We're out of kind of a grander question of lunar calendar and identifying the moon to Exodus night, or at least preparing for Exodus night, and now we're back into narrative, right? So that brings us to verse 3, and let's jump right in. Sue, do you want to read verse 3? Let's give Sue a microphone, and let's take the microphones off the stands. I think we find that that's easier.
In the Rashi or in the?
Let's start with the verse.
Okay, it's Dabru, starting with Dabru.
Yeah. Okay. Also, before we start, I feel like I'm about to slap my face because I should know this, but the person whose Zoom identity is DINAKAPZ, I should know this, but who is that? Just want to know who I'm talking to.
Baruch Kaplan.
Oh, yes, of course. Thanks, Bill. You look exactly like Dina Cap Z. So in fact, whenever I conjure Dina Cap Z, I'm always gonna now conjure your face. But thank you. I just wanted to know who was here. Thank you, Bill. Good to see your Punim. Okay, yes, Sue.
Dabru el kol adat Yisrael lemor. Be'asar l'chodesh hazeh, ויקחו להם איש,
Se.
שא לבית אבות, שא לבית.
Okay, so as with every verse, but particularly with this verse, we're going to have two basic challenges. One, what do the words mean? What's the vocab? How does it get put into a sentence? And then there are, at least to me, a bunch of things popping out that Omer Darsheni, that are inviting us to ask questions about. So let's go part one. What does the verse mean?
דברו על כל עדת ישראל. Speak to all of the עדת ישראל, the congregation of Israel.
In fact, if you look at the way Uncleish translates, the word adat, it's knishta, has nothing to do with potato or kasha. It's Beit Knesset, right? So way back then, the language that the Jews spoke used the Aramaic word knishta, which is from the same root as kanas, to gather in, to refer to a gathering of Jews. So that's why a synagogue to this day is called a Beit Knesset, amongst other things.
Would
Okay?
only a gathering of Jews, or would it to be any assembly?
Norm asked, would that only be a gathering of Jews or any assembly? I mean, I don't know. Almost every context in which I know of the language Aramaic being used and referred to is about us.
Yeah.
If you actually popped into Palestine in the year 40 CE and they were having a natural congregation of the Goyim who were gathering over there, would they use the word Knishta? I don't know. But I know it was being used here as a synonym for Adat, and our synagogue is Adat Beth Am, same concept. Okay, yes, Sue.
It's still interesting wording. בעשר לחודש הזה, at the 10th of this month,
right?
ויקחו להם איש, and you will take them. Everybody will take somebody. I don't know.
The way ish appears in the phrase, it seems like it is the object of the verb vayikhu, but the object of the verb vayikhu is se, not ish. And it's complicated because what vayikhu is what, singular or plural? Plural. So then the question is, if se, which means a sheep or a lamb, is the object, then what's ish doing? If ish is the subject of vayikhu, why isn't it not vayikach? Right? It's very hard to render this in English, but something like, they shall take who? Each person, aseh leveit avot. So it's like the verb has an implied subject, and then ish specifies that it's each person, even though the verb is plural. Okay, we'll look at some translations in a second, but keep translating, keep going.
You'll take a lamb to the house of your fathers, a household lamb.
Right. Either a household lamb as if it's the lamb that belongs to the house, or it's like a clarification, or just to lead the witness a little bit, an alternative. Se leveit avot, se labayit. We'd have to figure out what beit avot and bayit mean in a second, but it could mean that whatever se leveit avot is, se labayit is a rephrasing of that, in which case it's intentionally redundant. Or it could be that you have options. Option A is se leveit avot. We don't know what that means yet. And option B is se labayit. What does bayit mean? And right, house or household. Right? It could mean the structure. It could mean the family lives it. Let's say that bayit here means both house, domicile, and the people who live in it. What might beit avot mean aside from a modern word for an old age home? If that's what bayit means, then what might beit avot mean?
Would that be a cemetery?
Not a cemetery.
Take care of your elders.
Okay.
Bring
Clan, right? Most people understand that whatever bayit is, beit avot is a bigger gathering of people. Bayit is the people who live at this address, as it were. Beit avot is, if not like your full, it's not your shevet, it's not your tribe, but it's like your extended family, right? I think about, particularly in the shtetl, right? We don't really have it the same way anymore, right? You might have shared the community and the town, not only with your spouse and children, but like your sibling and their children and your parents might have been in that same little courtyard, something like that. It's more than one home, something like that, Beit Avot, and this is the Torah's way of letting us know that that's, I suppose, how the Israelites lived back then in Egypt. But we don't know for sure because the Torah doesn't define Beit Avot. Literally what it means, house of your ancestors. Leonard,
How do we know
microphone.
How do we know this isn't Vava Yipuch?
And it's a past tense?
Right.
Yeah. I think if it's Vav Hayipuch, it would be Va Yikhu. But I can't explain to you why I think that. I mean, not that I'm refusing to, it's that I'm not unable to. I think for the most part,
Like, what would it mean then?
well, that too, but even in pure grammar, and my answer could beg the question, well, how do we know it's a shva under the vav and not a patach or a kamatz? But I think for the most part, nearly every use of the vav hayipuch where the verb looks future but means past, the vowel underneath the vav is a va, not a v. No. And what Steve said, then what could it possibly mean? Okay, so now that we've done all that, now put it into a reasonable English sentence, or try.
Okay, go and speak to the congregation of Israel, saying that on the 10th of this month, each one of you will go and take a lamb to your house and to your clan.
Really good, okay? If you look at how Everett Fox translates this, I'll share the screen. Speak to the entire community of Israel. What does this footnote say here saying? This term, community, adat, is used somewhat interchangeably with a host of other in the Torah to indicate the leadership, often the elders of the people. Okay. On the 10th day of this month, they are to take them, that's the bichu, and now he puts in a comma, each man, that's the ish, a lamb, that's the seh, according to their father's house, that's the beit avot, a lamb per household, that's the bayit. So the way Everett Fox is understanding it is that your father's house is maybe some larger category, or maybe it's just kind of an honorific to the house you came from, and then Selabayat is specifically each household gets a lamb. What does this footnote say? See note to 614. Okay, we'll look at that later. Okay, that's one translation. I'm going to show you another translation, but I have to make this smaller.
It seems pretty clunky to me.
Yeah. All right, JPS. Oops. Like
Here in chapter 11.
Okay. Speak to the community leadership of Israel. So interesting, JPS agrees with Everett Fox, or vice versa, that adat here doesn't just mean all the people, but the leadership. Why does it say that? Kol Adat Israel, the whole community of Israel, which here denotes the part leadership that acts on behalf of the whole community. Okay, good. And say that on the 10th of this month, each of them shall take a lamb. So the JPS doesn't specifically work with the ish. It just puts the ish into the subject. Each of them is to take a lamb to a family, a lamb to a household. Again, I think JPS is saying that whatever Beit Avot is, it's a bigger group of people than a bayit. Let's look at one more, and then we'll see some hands up. I'm going to look at our friend Charles Kahani, see what he says. Oops. Okay. Speak. Remember, we've seen that Charles Kahani does not always translate word for word. Speak today. I don't know why he puts today, to the entire community of Israel, which suggests he's reading adat not as leadership, but as everybody, as follows. On the 10th day of the month of this year, every man, that says dealing with ish, shall take for himself a lamb, and he adds in, which is a deity of the Egyptians, for the family group, or a lamb for the household. It seems to agree that Beit Avot is a larger gathering than just a bayit. Okay. And we could look at 10 others, but you get a basic sense. I see Joanna's hand up. I see Rick's hand up, and there might be some hands around the table.
Two comments. One, why the 10th of the month? Like we were just introduced to, this month is going to be the beginning of months to you. It would make sense to me like, oh, we should do something on Rosh Chodesh. Why on the 10th of the month? And two, this is actually the first use of the word Edah in the Torah. So I think it's worth noting that. And it's worth sort of pondering, we have had the term B'nai Yisrael before. So why not kind of continue with the term B'nai Yisrael? Why switch to Adat Yisrael? And what does that signify?
Great. On your first question, why the 10th? We've just spoken about Rosh Chodesh. Rashi is going to ask a different question about why the 10th, because he's going to say why the 10th and not the what? The 14th, because we reading the story, knowing how it's going to end, know that in perpetuity, when is the Korban Pesach going to be offered? Not the 10th. Why is the 10th? This is not Yom Kippur, right? In fact, there's no other time that in our, except for this night, and I guess I'm giving away the answer a bit, where, what's that? Where anything having to do with our recollection of the Exodus story has anything to do with the 10th of Nisan. It's always the 14th, right? Or era 15. Good. So Joanna has those two questions on the floor. Rick?
Hi. So it's really weird, but my two questions were relating to what Joanna just brought up. So I really like that it's the first Eidah. So there's a not a tension, but there's a dynamic. There's a difference between what a congregation can do and what an individual can do, right? So the sentence starts with Dabru, which is rare for the interaction. Usually it's God just talking to Moses, Daber and Vaidaber and all that. It's rare that it's plural. So Moses and Aaron are supposed to speak to everybody. But anyway, the Ish is highlighted here with the trope, with the Tavir. The next sentence, Ish, is also highlighted with the Yativ. So it's an individual responsibility to do things. Maybe that was different than what the Egyptians used to do. But even though you're part of a community, each individual is supposed to do something, is my drash on the trope there.
Good drash on the trope. And on the Dabru, Rashi's going to go there as well. Like, who's the Dabru? Why is it plural? Is this an equal charge being given to Moshe and Aaron? Rashi has an answer, but that's the question. So far, the two questions that have been asked are anticipating Rashi, which is a good thing. I was talking to a Bar Mitzvah student yesterday working on his drash. Actually, on this parsha, on this verse, if I actually remember correctly, we're talking about this question, why the goat? And he asked a question that we found that the Chizkuni had asked a couple, like whenever the Chizkuni lived, the 14th, 15th century. And when I mentioned that to him, his face fell a little bit as if I was saying to him that he wasn't original. I'm like, no, the opposite. Like in science, you want to ask a question that no one's ever asked before. In Torah, when you ask a question that one of the great ones asked, that's an achievement. So far, you're all on the same wavelength as the giants. Okay, Barry, Elon, and we'll go around the table. Norm, was your hand up first?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I don't know if it was first, but,
let's get Norm. Hold on.
I wanted to address the Kol Adas Yisrael, and I wonder if it might be because he was supposed to address this to everyone, including the women. Kol B'nai Yisrael sometimes is ambiguous. Does it simply mean the sons rather than the whole people? When it's Adas, I think it's clear. Now, maybe it just means the leadership, but it seems to me that that's a possibility. And the other thing about it being the 10th is you can't do everything in one day. If Rachel told me I don't need to start preparing for Passover until the 10th of Nisan, I would laugh. And if you told Javi the same thing, she would laugh and ignore you.
Right. What the question is what's going on here, an instruction to begin a preparation for something that's going to happen the night of, or are we being told that in the night of the actual, in the year of the actual Exodus, a part of the ritual took place in the 10th as opposed to just a prep? You're right. And of course, preparing a house for Pesach in 2025 is different than arranging an animal to be slaughtered, right? But I get the point. Barry and then Elon.
So I want to pick up also on, this is very curious, this first use of there's a dot to describe what previously on Daniel has been B'nai Israel. So it would seem that B'nai Israel, we were dispersed all over Egypt, everywhere. We were not really an entity. We were just all over the place. But now, all of a sudden now, Moshe's got his arms around an entity called Adat.
Yeah, and I don't remember until seeing both Ever Fox and JPS go there the idea that when a dot is used, it's specifically speaking to the leadership as opposed to the people. I don't know if that's a linguistic etymological insight that they're giving or one that's being derived from context. And thank you, Joanna, for noting that this is the first usage of it. So when something is the first usage, it's from that meaning is derived. So I suppose that it's not that we know a dot means leadership from somewhere else, but since in this verse it seems obvious that he might be referring to telling the leaders all this rather than every individual congregant, then maybe that's what a dot means by definition. Ilan?
This is more of a literary comment. Is it really up until now the Torah has been largely narrative and stories with a couple of breaks for some begats and lists of names, but it's really been various tales. And all of a sudden we have kind of a break in the action to talk about rituals and laws. And it seems like I'm not quite sure why it is at this moment that we take a break, because we're still kind of in the middle of the action. This is a very kind of crucial time. And okay, by the way, we're going to take a little diversion to talk about some arcane laws that are going to bore the crap out of you. So I'm not quite sure why. I'm sure there must be a reason why it's here. It's not obvious to me.
No one says it quite like you, Ilan. Right. So it's not just that we're taking a break. We're taking a break from the crescendo, right? Like we know what's coming, right? We do know that 10th plague is coming. We know how catastrophic it'll be for Egypt and how significant it'll be for our story. Obviously, no one can answer the question why the Torah puts this here, right? I can construct an ex post facto answer, which is that when the Torah is being formed, trying to say this in a way that like covers all my bases, right? As the Torah is being formed, it's both being formed to tell the story of our people and set up that people's descendants to remember and observe and ritualize and commemorate, right? So in real time, right? Unless we think, and maybe some people do, that these words are being composed that night, right? This is being delivered to us as a way of saying, we know that you know that we know that you know that what's coming next is Exodus. And we're setting up now how you, the readers, are going to be remembering Exodus by knowing what they were obligated to do that night and then doing your own version of it, right? Could that have been done afterwards in a different section? Sure. But even though I don't get it, I sort of get it, right? Also because there's no Jewish Israelite historical moment that we commemorate more closely than this one, right? On Purim, we don't relive what happened to the Shushan Jews, right? On Pesach, we are, depending, particularly if you're from a more Sephardi tradition, when you walk around the house with a sack around your back, like you are cosplaying. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Cosplaying. Their experience, and it's almost been seeded in the Torah that yes, I'm about to tell you what's going to happen, but you should know, reader, that your primary obligation is to actually think of them that night because you got to be them, right? Every person in every generation has to see themselves, or according to the Rambam's version of that, laharot, to show himself as if they left Egypt. So we're being invited into the scene and the obligations thereafter. Any more on this table? Barry?
Could I ask you to the last three lines of Hiskun?
Well, I can bring it up on screen because I don't want to just have it be me and the text. Hiskuni on this verse.
Yeah. The last three lines of Gimel.
Of his third comment on the verse? Because there are several comments. On which comment?
Hiskuni, it begins with the Gimel, but the last three lines is Rabbi Avot, Afilo Enam.
Which of his comments on the verse?
Beit Avot.
Sela Beit Avot?
It's Sela Beit Avot, yes.
Uh-huh.
And he's saying something here, and I'm
the comment afilo einam mishpacha.
Yeah, please.
let's get through Rashi on that verse first, and then we'll see what it's going to say, because I want to build up to that, because Rashi has some questions earlier on in the verse, but I have it up on the screen. Okay, let's see. Larry, your hand is raised. I'm first curious, are there any interesting translations you got in front of you?
Oh, can I ask my question first, and then I'll look.
Of course.
This is addressed more to Elon, though you may have a comment about it. Back in Bereshit, chapter 32, verse 33, after Yaakov had been wrestling, and the last line of the chapter says, and I'm reading Alter's translation, "Therefore the children of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh, which is the hip socket, to this day, for he had touched Jacob's hip socket of the sinew of the thigh." So this is not the first time that this has happened.
What's the this?
Where we have a sort of out of an anachronistic comment from the narrative that's going on.
But it's only one line, right? It's not. They don't go on for 20 verses.
No, it's true, but it. To me, and what we've discussed this before, it's pretty clear what was going on here in terms of the way in which the text was being edited together. I just wanted to mention that this, and there are other. I'm probably forgetting other occasions.
Yeah, there are certain places where the most traditional read of the Torah is challenged by what seemed to be ex post facto stitching, right? V'haknani az ba'aretz. The Canaanites at that time were in the land. That's from Parshat Lech Lecha.
Right.
When is that line being written? If it's referring back to then, because the most traditional understanding of it is being written as it's happening, right? So those kinds of lines give, the traditional medieval commentators the most amount of consternation about how to square it all together.
Okay, so the translation here from Alter is, "Speak to all the community of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, let every man take a lamb for a father's house, a lamb for a household."
Okay.
Sorry, and Kaplan is. Here we go. "Speak to the entire community of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, every man must take a lamb. For each extended family, a lamb for each household." So not much different.
Not much. Okay. Rebecca, and then we're going to look at Rashi, and then I'm going to close this out around 9:10 today. I'm just seeing the things piling up that really need immediate attention. So I'm sure you all have versions of it too, but I'm glad we got a chance to study. Rebecca?
Just a quick thing. I'm wondering if the use of the word edah is to include other people that are not Bnei Israel, that are going to be traveling with Israel, or perhaps are already living with Israel. So they're a household that is more than just Jews.
Interesting. Okay. A wonderful possibility, because we do know that there's going to be an Erev Rav joining with them, and so the question is maybe they're involved in the ritual themselves. Okay. We've raised a lot of the questions that one could ask on a verse, not all of them. Let's see what Rashi says. The fact that Rashi raised the question does not mean it's the only question or even a worthy question, but this is, when it comes down to it, a Rashi shiur. So, Sue, do you want to pick up on Dabru?
I do. It gets kind of convoluted, but I do.
Yeah.
Dabru. Wait, I lost it now. Hold on.
Rashi has at least four different comments on this verse.
Yeah.
And the first one is on the Dabru.
Okay. Dabru el koladat, just not Israel. V'chi Aharon medaber?
Question mark. Okay. Translate and then tell us what it means.
Okay. Does that mean that Aaron was speaking?
Right. And why would Rashi? What's the question on the question?
Plural.
The plural and the.
Right. And so if the Dabru is plural, Rashi saying, am I supposed to understand from this that this instruction is beginning to Aaron too? But the halo
kfar ne'emar ata tedaber.
Okay. I love how Rashi uses the word kfar, because This is a wonderful example of ein mukdam u'muchar b'Torah, right? But hasn't it already been said? You would expect, therefore, him to be referring backwards.
You should talk.
He's referring forwards. You all have the book of Shemot in front of you.
Okay.
Open up to chapter 31, verse 13. This is Parshat Ki Tisa. But in Rashi's mind, there's no forward or backwards in the Torah.
This is
Okay.
chapter 7.
What's that?
Put in this is chapter 7, verse 2.
That he's referring to?
Yes.
Maybe there were two possibilities for Atad the bear. Look at 31:13 first. So we'll look at both. In my version of Rashi, it's throwing us forward. This is in Parshat Ki Tisa, chapter 31, verse 12. We'll start. Vayomer Adonai al Moshe lemor. God said to Moses, saying, "V'ata, you singular, daber." Interesting. It's not to daber. So maybe this version of Rashi is not pointing us to the specific verse that Rashi had in mind. V'ata daber al bnei Israel. You individually are going to speak to the Jewish people, lemor, saying, "Achad shabtotai tishmoro," that you have to follow my Shabbatot, etc. What's the verse that yours?
7:2.
Chapter 7, verse 2. Yeah, interesting. That's this is fascinating because it's both the case that chapter 7, verse 2 actually has the words viatat daber, not just daber, and it would make Rashi's kfar make a little more sense. So this is, to go to 7:1, by Yomer Nai Moshe, God said to Moses, Re'eh, behold, see, netaticha Elohim lefaro, I turns you into a sort of a lord to God, to Pharaoh. V'Aaron achicha yeh neviecha, and Aaron, your brother, will be kind of, we remember talking a lot about this at the time. You can't really translate it as your prophet, but maybe the person who's going to go alongside with you or be your spokesperson. And then God specifies, Ata tedaber, you individually are going to be the one who's going to say, at kol asher at tzedakah, that I command you. So
that's what it means, possibly Aaron.
So whichever one it is, inside the logic of our Rashi's saying, why would we think, or why does God seem to give this very important instruction that's supposed to be given out to Adat Bnei Israel in the plural Dabru? So that's the question. Don't we normally think that Moses is the primary person communicating here? I'll put a parentheses on what Rashi says, and I'm sure Rashi was aware of this too. But we know that Moses isn't always the only one who speaks, right? In fact, in the opening, the first few plagues, it's often Aaron who does some of the work, and then Rashi asks that, why is Aaron doing the work? And the answer is because you shouldn't bite the hand that feeds you, and so it can't be Moses who plagues the blood, the Nile, because he was drawn from it, and it can't be Moses who, what's the number? Moses can't be the one to strike the Nile to bring forth the frogs, because the Nile held Moses as a baby. So Rashi knows that it's not only always Moses who speaks, but still he has the question. And the reason, and I can't prove this, the reason why I think he asked the question is to give this answer. Sometimes it's reverse. Sometimes he asked the question because he's really troubled by the thing in the verse. Sometimes, because he's like every rabbi throughout history, he already knows what he wants to give his sermon about. He just needs to figure out what to hook it on. And I think this is to give the following mini sermonette. Keep going, Sue.
Ela, Ela cholkin kavod ze laze, v'omrim ze laze. Well, but
as an answer. But the reason is
to spread kavod, to spread to honor each other.
Right.
We want to publicly. No, you say it. No, you do it. No,
right.
You take it. No, you do it.
In from speak, to be cholek kavod is to bestow honor upon your fellow, right? And it's clearly an ancient phrase, literally to divide honor, but it means to cast honor on one another. Rashi says we learn from this that Moshe and Aaron, he doesn't mention it explicitly, but those are the subjects. They would constantly defer to one another, giving honor to one another. Omrim.
Ve'omrim ze laze lamdeni. And they should say to each other, teach, we're teaching each other.
Right. They would actually model it. So what Rashi is saying is that Moses and Aaron would be in front of the congregation, and Moshe would say to Aaron, Lamdani, teach me, remind me what God said to do. And Aaron would say, wait, Moshe, Lamdani, teach me what we're supposed to do here, implying that the two of them were involved entirely.
ויוצא מבין שניהם, כאילו שניהם מדברים. And it comes out between the two of them as if they're both speaking.
Right. So this is Rashi's way of resolving a mini problem in the verse, which is how could it be ata tedaber, you singular, and dabru, you plural? But it's really a way of saying, what's more significant, that Moshe emerged from the scene as the only person that God speaks to, or for the children of Israel to know that God speaks to many, that it's a proper thing to give honor and deference to your fellow, that hierarchy is less significant than results, right? You can imagine the Dvar Torah you could get from this. And I have a sense that Rashi wanted to give that Dvar Torah, and he found a reason. My gut can't prove it. Sue?
I still think it's very weird. We've had an entire, we're partway through Shemot, and we've had V'edaber Adonai el Moshe Lemor, and we've had, Moshe Medaber LeBnei Israel a lot. It's our whole story. And all of a sudden we're talking to Adad Israel and Aaron and Moshe. No, you say it. No, you say it.
Yeah.
No, it's weird.
Yeah. It's weird, and that's what gives me the instinct that this is, in this exact particular moment, less about the narrative and more about how Jews and Jewish leaders ought to engage with each other. Right? That's my gut. Sandy, and then I see someone else's hand, and then we might call it a day.
So when we first re-meet Aaron, Moshe is saying, I can't speak. And the whole purpose of Aaron being there was not because God had selected him for this job, but because Moshe was reluctant to take it. And maybe this is the text's way of resolving the idea that all through here, it's been saying that Moshe is talking, but maybe Aaron was talking. And the text just wanted to convey the idea that, God was transmitting this through Moshe. Moshe was the leader, but it was Aaron's mouth that was supposed to be doing the talking.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just a way of kind of wrapping up that storyline before Moshe took control.
Wonderful. And reinforcing that maybe that it happens commonly, that maybe the one that we think, is the creator of all the ideas and all the public presentations often has someone else helping him or her, right? That may not get as much of the spotlight. Rick and then Rebecca.
I just wanted to share the footnote from Silverman. This is my version of the Rashi. It says, the text states that when a message was to be communicated to Pharaoh, Moses was to tell it to Aaron, and then Aaron was to deliver it to Pharaoh. Since it required a special injunction by God that this should be the procedure when Pharaoh was to be addressed, we may gather that when a communication was to be made to the Israelites, no such method was to be adopted. But I don't agree with that based on what you just said, Rabbi. I like your version better of it. Anyway.
Well, I like that you quoted something that you didn't agree with. That's very postmodern of you, Rebecca.
Building on what Sandy said, I think in this particular case, where there's a ritual, a sacrifice, a religious ritual to be done, in particular, this is in Aaron's responsibility to communicate it. So that's why perhaps he's the one.
Because he's going to be the ritual officiant. That's really nice. I said Rebecca was going to ask, but I can't not call on Stevie. Come on.
So I looked up the source of the Mechilta, and there's the question is asked 3 times by 3 different sages that each give different answers. And the first 2 both quote the pasuk in chapter 31 and say sort of in different ways that Moshe is superior to Aaron. And then the third opinion doesn't quote any pasuk, but says exactly what Rashi says, that each one is saying, is giving honor to the other, and they're sort of on equal footing. So then Rashi sort of is providing a proof text for the Mechilta that didn't have one itself. I think is amazing.
That's fascinating. Just to define terms, Mechilta is the name of one of the collection of midrashim on the book of Shemot, and as we've said, Rashi is often culling from numerous midrashim and tightening it and putting it into a concentrated form, and it does resolve what's confusing about here because right, the midrash which this seems to be from goes use the verses later on in Shemot, but the words that Rashi used, v'ata tidaber, is from an earlier verse. So he's maybe thought we wouldn't notice. I don't know. Maybe
I think it's there's three slightly different opinions sort of in the Mechilta, and Rashi's picking the one he likes best, and then he's adding a proof text that the Mechilta didn't even have.
Yeah, good. All right, we got through one of the Rashis. I would love to do this all day. I really would, but my messages are blowing up and there are urgent needs. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. And just keep your ears perked for whatever we might be asking people in the community to do to help others. There's going to be some catastrophic loss.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.